Hi, you're on the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. We're here every Sunday night for a couple of hours to regale you with the events of this world, things that are happening. We are in our 20th year of broadcasting this particular program. The Bible Forum is a non-profit faith ministry maintained by the free will offerings of viewers like yourself. You can give a one-time gift. You can give a monthly commitment of any amount. You can use PayPal, personal check. Everything's tax deductible. If you write the check, write it out to Alternatives, and you'll get a receipt for anything that you send. Check the website for the links. Email me for an address if you want to send a check. We appreciate it. TheBibleForum.net is where you find everything you need to know. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened this week. I've got it categorized a little bit differently this time around. This category is called Border News. There's a lot of border stuff, a lot of things going on. In Washington, D.C., the Associated Press declared this week that President Donald Trump stalked out of his negotiating meeting with congressional leaders on Wednesday. He himself tweeted, "I said bye-bye," as efforts to end the 19-day partial government shutdown fell into deeper disarray over the president's demand for billions of dollars to build a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border. I think today we're finishing up day 20 as we broadcast to you. The demand? Well, for Democrats to honor their own insistence that a wall be built to limit to control for the tens of thousands of gate crashers on the southern border. That's right. Republicans said Trump posed a direct question to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi in the meeting. He said if he opened the government, would she fund the wall? And she categorically said no. Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer said Trump slammed his hand on the table and walked out. Republicans said Trump, who passed out candy at the start of the meeting, did not raise his voice, did not raise his hand. There was no table pounding. These are the same Democrats who, for the last 15 or 20 years, have been advocating for money to build a wall. In USAToday.com, I read this week how the Border Patrol agents apprehended 27,518 members of family units in December alone, the highest monthly total on record. That's people trying to get across the border. That figure has steadily climbed for the last 5 months, even as President Trump made stopping migrant caravans the centerpiece of his midterm election strategy and drove Washington into a partial government shutdown over funding. Question: why do we have customs agents in every airport? The same reason we have locks on our doors and alarm systems. The same reason we have police patrols in our neighborhoods. The U.S. Department of State 2005 estimated that 70% of all sex-trafficked persons are trafficked from Mexico to the United States, and 50% of which are minors, and they're being trafficked for prostitution. Statistics such as these justify a wall on our southern border, if nothing else. Boots on the ground reporter Alyssa Jordheim, author of an early book on the sex traffic of minors, wrote, quote, "Made in USA," that the corridor for trafficked children victims flows south to north. The serious efforts at border security manifestly stems the sexual and non-sexual traffic of women and children. So why then are the Democrats so adamantly against border security? Why did mainstream media hide the January 9, 2019 news when President Trump signed into law the Frederick Douglass Act, an act which authorized $430 million to combat human trafficking? And why did the party leaders and their mainstream media comrades suppress public knowledge of legislation named for one of their heroes, Frederick Douglass, aimed at crippling the traffic in women and children. Under Trump's helm, 9,200 individuals have been arrested on suspicion of human trafficking just in the last 18 months. Under Obama, 1,238 were arrested for trafficking in his first 2 years. During 8 years in office, Obama's administration made only 42 arrests, or 42 more arrests for human trafficking than Trump's administration made in his first 18 months. So the question becomes, which party, which philosophy cares more about children and about the devastating effects of human trafficking? And why? The reality here is the Democrat resistance is political. Everybody knows it. And the children are still paying the price. As long as there are desperate people being promised for far more than anyone can deliver, there will be people at the Mexican-American border trying to get in. We now know that a large percentage of these asylum seekers are criminals, non-Central Americans, and sex traffickers. The toll in human suffering is beyond our imagination. And why? Because the liberal socialist wing of American politics is out of power, and they want back in. To do this, they are willing to pay any price you can pay. They are sophisticated human traffickers, trafficking in human suffering for their own financial and political gain. And you might think that's radical, but what rational human being wants millions of illegal immigrants to flood into their country, to overwhelm their medical, social, legal, financial, housing, employment systems with little or no control? We don't even know who these people are. Idiots, that's who. Anarchists, drug dealers, sex traffickers, and Democrats. Politicians who happen to be out of power at the moment and are entirely resentful of that fact. They're willing to pay, or have you pay, in blood. So they are willing to use these pawns, these men, women, boys, girls, children, who don't speak our language, don't share our values, don't understand our system. Women and children who are being starved and brutalized by a march of hundreds and thousands of miles through dangerous and even deadly territories, beset by all the natural barriers and the criminals who feed off their miseries. All the while, these politicians live in lavish splendor, nurtured and encouraged by a liberal media, a liberal education and values system. They are now the pawns of progressive politics and ungodly men and women. And those who oppose encouraging these poverty-stricken, desperate people to embark on this fool's errand, they're the real problem. Welcome to the end of the age, a time when biblical values and reason have been replaced by greed, ambition, and disdain for all things right and decent. A time when things like that are being called normal, natural, positive, helpful. And then there's the wall in Israel. No, not the one you're thinking of. In the midst of all of this and our Southern Wall debate, Israel recently opened and revealed their new wall. It's a wall that runs down the middle of a road in the West Bank. It's a physical barrier separating Israeli and Palestinian traffic. Can't even drive your cars on this side of the wall. It comes with security provisions, provides for necessary solution for all populations, Israeli and Palestinian, according to an Israeli announcement. The 5 kilometer route, 4370, is divided down the length by a concrete wall topped with fencing. There's a picture of it online. 2 lanes of the road connect to the Giva Binyamin settlement, also known as Adam, north of Jerusalem, to the city's French Hill neighborhood. The road is open to Israeli traffic and to Palestinians who have entry permits for Jerusalem. The other 2 lanes branch off and lead around the east and south of the city without access to Jerusalem itself. And these are for the vehicles of Palestinians who do not have access permits to Jerusalem. Interesting, huh? In Jerusalem as well, the Jerusalem News Service is reporting that Brigadier General Eli Ben-Meir, a former Israeli senior intelligence officer, recently told the Jewish News Service that the era of chaos in the Middle East is drawing to a close, and a new phase, which contains its own set of dangers, is beginning to take shape. At issue is the revolving and evolving nature of the region. It used to be, he said, we didn't know who was in control or what these people really wanted, talking about the enemies of Israel. Today, those states that were a mess have begun stabilizing. That's a good thing. That trend is expected to continue throughout the coming year. It's called regime change by means of the streets or Facebook. All of that now is gone. The danger of assassination remains real, but less an ongoing issue. And what all this is talking about are the main players and how much more settled and less chaotic everything really is. Now, moving forward, it's going to mean that these players will have to control the radicals in the Gaza Strip, or this whole house of cards is going to come down. This week, late this week, Israel reported they had destroyed the last of the known tunnels between Israel and all these people. Now the money is being given to Hamas, recently by Qatar. When they ran out of money, representatives from Qatar, we call it Qatar, but I think they call it Qatar, would show up with suitcases with millions of dollars. And the experts are telling us that if that money stops flowing, the whole region is going to come unglued. But you know, this is exactly what the Bible has predicted for the future, especially of the future of Israel. A time when Israel's neighbors will come after her in force. Revelation chapter 12, verse 14 talks about the day when Israel is so beset and so besieged by her neighbors that she will flee to the mountains for protection from total destruction. Now, all of that's going to take place apparently during the Great Tribulation. But the events leading up to this are what we're watching now. Those events will be that the nations round about will become more emboldened to destroy Israel from the face of the earth. These neighbors are Arabs, largely ancient family relatives. Men and women, descendants of people who have been dispossessed of their heritage, so they claim. They are largely descendants of Ishmael and Esau, men living outside the grace of God, now motivated by Islam and opposing religious system. And these people will move against Israel in a very definite way. And they'll do so under the deceitful leadership of one who is referred to as the man of sin. Now, you can read some of these stories in the Old Testament prophetic works, Jeremiah, Daniel, Zechariah, and you can read of this man of sin in the book of the Revelation. As the Middle East enters this new order, decision makers across the region will likely be aware that the margin for miscalculation has become smaller. Currently, Israel is asking for America's help in securing the Golan Heights as a Jewish possession. They have occupied it for the last several decades out of safety reasons. The United States voted for the first time against the annual non-binding U.S. resolution condemning Israel's control of that region. That's new, and it's an encouraging precedent, but one which is surely to enrage Israel's neighbors even more. The question is, will Europe follow American patterns? We'll have to wait and see. In other news, Germany and France are set to forge a pact aligning their defense, diplomatic, and economic policies in an unprecedented, what they call, twining pact. One they say is regarded as a prototype for the future of the European Union. At issue is the rise in populism and nationalism, along with the declining influence these major European countries now have in the world. They plan to develop and coordinate policy positions ahead of a pivotal EU summit in order to make the bloc a more decisive power on the world stage. Two countries will hold regular consultations on all levels ahead of these European meetings. And they will take care to establish common positions and issue joint statements. They will stand up for a strong and effective common foreign and defense policy and strengthen and deepen the economic and currency unions. Who are these two nations? They are Germany and France. Probably the two who have the greatest possibility of problem should Great Britain actually decide finally to get out. They are the major players in the EU. Both President Macron and Mrs. Merkel have expressed frustration at the rise of this populism and nationalism, at Europe's dithering in the face of problems like climate change and mass migration, something they have encouraged heretofore. The mass migration, not the climate change. On New Year's Eve, Mrs. Merkel declared that Germany would stand up and fight for multilateralism and was ready to assume more responsibility in the world. You see, the common market is an illustration of multilateralism. Nations who combine to enrich their own people while limiting what other nations may be able to do with the same trading partners. The common market will suffer somewhat should Great Britain pull out. And these two largest nations in the market are working to make sure that they become the dominant force in whatever the new alignment should be. The biblical end-time scenario sees a strong European element, vestiges of the Roman Empire, aiding Israel against her enemies. Now, Europe is traditionally Christian, although in name only these last 1,500 years. And it's supposed that the Antichrist will have the blessings of Rome in his effort to dominate the Western world. And the idea is that he will be European, Western, as in Western civilization. These are dramatic changes that are taking place in our world. We are isolated from much of it here in the United States. Over in the Middle East and in Europe and Russia, they are much more acutely aware of both the problems and the possible solutions and the things they need to accomplish. Right now, none of them are all that friendly with Israel. They claim to be, and they make movements and words and utter sounds that could be interpreted as support. They don't like Israel. But one day they're going to have to defend her as another European country. And the United States is going to play a big part in that. and it's right around the corner. The signs are there. You can see it on the newspaper headlines and in your computer if you go online to any news outlet. It won't be long.